Good evening. So today I'll be looking at the artifacts from Shandalar. Just one little caveat is that I don't know why, but I can't seem to filter the non-creature from the creature list. So I'm only looking at the non-creature artifacts, but you may see them pop up in this list, but we'll just ignore them. So first of all, we have Aladdin's lamp, which I've never used because it has an outrageous cost. And it more or less functions as like a scry, but slightly worse. You could play it in such a way that you always just draw one card, and then basically you're just paying X. You're paying 1 mana to draw 1 card. Would I want to spend 10 mana to have that ability? No. I'm going to put it in F because I think it's actually really rubbish, to be honest. Aladdin's ring, meanwhile, is actually potentially quite useful. It is expensive, but I do like the fact that you have a permanent way of consistently dealing kind of like damage that doesn't require a creature attacking, and that stays on the field. And 4 is very useful amount of damage, so I'd say B. Expensive but useful. Alcor's Tomb, target permanent you control becomes the colour of your choice. It's okay. I mean, the fact that it has to be one you control certainly lowers its usefulness. I'd probably put this in C. Yeah, I don't think it's directly as useful. And if I remember correctly, there's a different artifact which changes the colour of something for 1 turn, but it's any permanent, which is a lot more useful for certain effects. Amulet of Krug is okay. Prevent the next 1 damage that will be dealt to target creature or player this turn. It's not too expensive. It's quite nice if you're protecting a weaker creature, particularly even if it has plenty of toughness. Your opponent is normally calculating how much damage they need to deal to destroy it. So if you can just kind of cut that off 1 less than necessary, your creature will survive. So I think it's useful. Goes into B, I'd say. Anchor of Mishra, I would put this in A. I think it's actually potentially really useful. It's cheap, and as long as you've built the right deck for it, it kind of comes into the same category as Dingus Egg of like punishing land, and as long as you're able to compensate by either having a deck that uses as little land as possible or protecting yourself from the damage, yeah, I'd say Anchor of Mishra is certainly an A and very useful. Armageddon Clock, I'm a really big fan of this card. I really like how it works. Essentially, it's a cumulative upkeep situation where it will start dealing more and more damage to everyone unless the opponent starts paying to take the counters off. And the AI in Shandalar starts doing that. They start to kind of panic and will repeatedly waste their mana trying to just take counters off. So I like this one. In terms of usefulness, it's a bit expensive and a little bit niche. So I'm going to put it in B. Ashnod's Altar, I don't think it's inherently that useful. Sacrifice a creature, add 2 to your mana pool. I don't think any creature generation stuff in Shandalar is cheap enough to justify. Like, it costs. I mean, there's situations where there's lots of creatures that cost 1 mana, which you could use this for, but I just don't think I can't see it being incredibly useful. Maybe I'm not giving it enough credit. Maybe putting it in C is too harsh. Maybe I'll put it in B because it could have a use, but it's just not. It doesn't jump out at me as being very useful. Ashnod's Gear, I like this one. I like all the cards which are equipped. Essentially, they're equips before equips existed. They all have the same kind of verbose. You may choose not to untap this during your untap step to keep it, kind of like keep it equipped, but it's not an equip because Shandalar doesn't have those. In terms of its effect, it's quite useful. It's slightly worse than Immolate, but it's just nice to have a permanent version of it. I'd put this in A. I think it's useful. Might change your mind, but Ashnod's Transmogrant is quite useful if you're pumping up a creature by sacrificing others, and it's relatively cheap. In fact, 1 mana, and then it's free. You just have to tap to perform its effect. Turning things into artifacts could actually be quite useful defensively if you've got protection. If you've got some kind of protection against artifacts. could work in your favor because you could use it to turn an opponent's creature into an artifact. A or B, maybe B. It's a little bit more challenging for a setup. But strong B. Baal's Cage, target creature does not untap during its controller's next untap step. I think this one's quite useful. I have realised that it doesn't actually do the tapping, so I'm kind of downgrading my opinion of it now that I'm reading it. Yeah, it's not tap and then they can't untap. It's if, for example, if the creature has attacked or tapped or done something. I'm going to put this in C, I think. Now it seems a bit less useful. Basalt Monolith is okay. It's a bit like Mana Vault, but not as strong. Doesn't have as much. I'm trying to think what the word is. Much of a price, because Mana Vault starts damaging you if you don't untap it. I think there are better ways of generating mana than this, and also the cost of a hard 3, not up to 3, but 3, in a game with mana burn, it's quite likely to backfire on you a little bit. At least you're kind of miscalculating how much mana you actually need. So I'm going to put this in C, I think. Skipping Battering Ram because it's not. It's an artifact creature. We're doing creatures separately. Black Lotus, do I need to say any more? It's obviously an S. Producing 3 mana for free. In fact, that should not be there. Yeah, 3 mana for free is ridiculous. The fact it costs nothing is ridiculous. It really should cost 3 mana to make it a balanced card in this game, but we're not here to talk about balance, we're here to talk about how the game really is. So, as it is. I like all the mana batteries. I think they're really useful for any kind of deck which avoids using lands or just wants kind of a backup in case they are dealing with a land destruction sort of deck. They're obviously expensive for what they are. Yeah, I'll put this in a B, I think. I mean, I'm thinking because I do like the mana batteries as a concept, but it's just not quite as good as other cards that deal with the same. Yeah, maybe I'll put all the batteries in B and then see how I feel. But yeah, Black Vice could be an A or an S. Actually, this is a really strong card. So basically, as long as your opponent has more than 4 cards in their hands, they're taking passive damage all the time. It costs 1 mana. You could play multiple Black Vices on your first, well, maybe 1 or 2 in your first couple of turns, realistically. And depending on your opponent's deck, and particularly if you combine this with Howling Mine, which is another artifact card I'd put as an S. I mean, I'm looking at my tier list right now and thinking, you know, Black Lotus is so ridiculously strong it would have to be in its own tier by itself. So I might need to do that at the end. Or I guess everything else has to be an A. We'll see. Black Vice is an A, in that case. Blue Mana Battery, as we said, all batteries I'm going to put in a B. They're not bad. Bone Flute, all creatures get -1/0 until end of turn. I've never used this, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone use it in the game. I can't off the top of my head think of anyone that would have it. I mean, it's... I guess if you're being attacked, it's nice to prevent the damage. But yeah, let's put it in C. Book of Ras, pay 2 life, draw a card, and pay 2 mana as well. I'd consider this quite rubbish, really. I mean, it's like Greed, but... well, it's basically Greed, but an artifact. C. Bordering on an F. Bottle of Suleiman. This card is not very good if I remember correctly. Yeah, this is... I mean, if you like playing games of complete random chance, 50% chance of getting a good flying creature, or just damaging yourself and getting nothing back. Realistically, in Shandalar, it's not reliable enough to be useful unless you have lots of copies of this and you're just, repeatedly throwing them out until you win, and have a way to deal with the live damage. Okay, so let's not kick the table. I was missing Bottle of Suleiman for some reason. It's a C anyway. I think it's not reliable at all. Bronze Tablet is a really interesting card. I've really come to value this card in a recent run I did, because it basically allows you to steal your opponent's cards permanently. And this is, in Shandalar, this is really crucial, potentially if you're struggling, for example, to get the Mox artifacts or any other really rare cards that you can't just buy from a town. The way you set up Bronze Tablet is, if your opponent has less than 10 life, you can take control of a card that they have on the field. And I've used this to steal multiple Mox artifacts, so it's really interesting. The setup's a bit complicated, and obviously if you're not trying to steal opponent's cards, it's a waste of time. But I really do think that this has a very valid, especially if you're doing a wizard run, and you're finding dungeons are just too difficult to reliably get the cards you need. So I'm going to put it in A. Surprisingly good cards, but particularly because a lot of the requiring anti cards like Dark Pact are rubbish. I actually like this one a lot. Candelabra of Tornos, untap target X lands. You know what? I've never really understood why this card is useful. You're paying 1 mana to get 1 mana. I guess you would use it for specific kinds of lands, potentially lands that give, I don't think Shandalar really has those, but there are lands that give 2 mana. There are some lands that have a special effect. Now that I think of it, there's a card, what's it called? It's a blue, it produces blue mana, 1 for, I think it's, it's going to annoy me now that I don't remember the name of it, but it produces 1 blue mana for every artifact you control. The Tabernacle? No, Tabernacle's something else. That's, you have to pay mana for every creature you have. Academy, Tolarian Academy? Might be Tolarian, something like that. But yeah, this could be useful, but for the vast majority of decks, it's not. So, C. Celestial Prism, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. I would say this is pretty rubbish. You're paying a lot of mana to, if you don't have a reliable way of generating that colour of mana, why would you have a card in your deck that requires it? I'm going to put it in C. I think it's just not very good. Okay, with the magic of video editing, you won't have noticed that I had to go put Celestial Prism back in this list. Next, skipping all the creatures for now, Conservator. Conservatory. Prevent the next 2 damage that will be dealt to you this turn. It's okay. It's B or C. I guess it's useful if you're not playing a white deck. C. Copper Tablet. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Copper Tablet deals 1 damage to that player. This is actually a really useful card if you have the right setup. If you can protect yourself from damage from artifacts, it's kind of like a slightly weaker version of Armageddon Clock. I'll put that in B. Coral Helm. Discard a card at random. Target creature gets +2/+2 in turn to turn. Potentially really strong card if you're playing with a very large deck size and drawing lots of cards. The fact it's at random, it's not that hard to kind of game it really, because you would either have 1 card in your hand, so you're discarding that card, or you would plan on discarding all of your cards to have like a spike, like a sudden hit of damage. Could be an A. It's not one I personally use or really like, but I think it has very strong potential. Crystal Rod is one of these. There's a set of them. Whenever a player casts a spell of this colour, you may pay 1 life. If you do, you gain 1 life. I like it. It's cheap, and obviously you would use it in a deck of the correct colour, so you can gain it for yourself. And often in duels you'll find opponents using multiple different colours. Do I think they're worthy of A? Therefore, do I think they're better than mana batteries? No. I think they're on this. I think they're on par with them. So maybe these all go into B. All the life gaining ones. Cursed Rack. As Cursed Rack enters the battlefield, choose an opponent that shows some players maximum hand size is 4. I think this could potentially be really useful in combination with like cards that force them to draw a lot. You'll find they'll be throwing a lot of their stuff in the bin. The only thing I would say is that most opponents in Shandalar have very big decks. Like I don't think any of them run like 40 card decks or anything quite lean. So yeah, I think it's A, because you could combine this with lots of things that take things from their graveyard and turn them to your advantage. So I do like it. And it's not too expensive, I guess. Cyclopean Tomb. I don't remember what this one does. Put a counter on target non-swamp land. The land is a swamp for as long as it has a counter on it. At the beginning of each of your upkeeps for the rest of the game, remove all Maya counters from a land that Maya counter was put on. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so basically it turns things into swamps. Sure. I think Cursed Land is vastly better than this, because this is almost bordering on tedious. So I'm going to put this in B, but I think it could be used in lots of decks. Skipping the creatures. Dingus Egg is an A for sure. You know, the classic Dingus Egg plus Armageddon from, I can't remember the name of the opponent. It's like a high priest or something. It's the white one that chases you around. Devastating, as long as you have the right setup. So yeah, I mean, you can do stuff like balance. I think he has that card as well. Target player discards a card. This is brutal, expensive but brutal. So A. Anything that forces your opponent to discard cards. Repeat it. Like, you can just obviously repeat this every single turn. Yeah, I'd say this is slightly stronger than Cursed Rack, because Cursed Rack, yeah, it's strong once, but then your opponent kind of is put on notice that they have a hand size of 4. Meanwhile, this is just a continuously ticking way of discarding. Ebony Horse is not a creature. I don't remember what this one does. Untap target attacking creature you control, prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to and dealt by that creature. I guess this is interesting, kind of like a way of cancelling an attack after you've declared it. I'm going to put it in B because it's a little bit niche, but I think it could potentially be a nice way of protecting a creature you have. Felden's Cane is very strong, particularly if you're running a lean deck. Shuffle your graveyard into your library. It's, yeah, you might say it's the poor man's Time Twister, but it doesn't affect your opponent. I think that gets a nice A. Fellow Stone is, I would say, about 1.5 billion times better than Celestial Prism, because it's cheaper and the tapping is free, and maybe it's not quite as reliable, but I mean, you're basically getting not obviously the Mox artifacts are all better, but I like this one because obviously if you're just interested in getting any kind of mana, you know, for the cost of 2 you have it, and if you're lucky enough to have an opponent using the color of land that you need, all the better. So I think this is an A. Target creature gains flying. Yeah, this is a fun one. I love the really deep and meaningful flavor text. I love it. The card art's really cool, and I like what it does. It could be really useful. So, A. Force Field. The next time an unblocked creature of your choice would deal combat damage to you this turn, prevent all but one of that damage. Really useful. I might be putting too many things in A. We'll see. Fountain of Youth is really useful. It's a free, it costs nothing, which is nice. It's a bit slow. But in Shandalar, life gain is super important. So A, Gauntlet of Might. Red creatures get 1/1, and then it's basically like another version of mana flare. I think it's really useful. Glasses of Urza, look at target player's hand. I mean, if you know the game well enough, you don't really even need to see their hand half the time, because you kind of know what their decks are comprised of. B. No, C. C. I'm going to be harsh. That's a creature. Mana batteries all go into B. Helm of Chatzuk, target creature gains banding. Do not underestimate the power of banding, but there's still a B. Oops. Howling Mine, this could be an S, A or an S. I really like this card. I've got no idea why it says if Howling Mine is untapped, because how would you tap it? You know, your opponent would have to go to a lot of effort to untap it, to tap it even. But yes, this card can be really devastating. It just forces everyone to keep drawing more and more cards. In certain decks, this can be really useful because you can take advantage of it. In other decks, like slower decks, you know, being able to play one land a turn is just not enough, and so they have to start throwing away cards. I'm having a bit of a problem in the sense of is it as good as Black Lotus, which is ridiculous. Tough one. I guess there is that innate disadvantage to it because you're allowing your opponent to draw more cards, so maybe it doesn't quite deserve the highest tier. Icy Manipulator is useful. B. It can be very strong, but obviously it's just one creature. So, Meekstone is another example of that. Should probably be an S, but Iron Star is the red version of the gain 1 life stuff. Ivory Cup, same thing. Ivory Tower. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain X life, where X is the number of cards in your hand -4. This is lovely. This is definitely A. It's the opposite of Cursed Rack. Not Cursed Rack. Black Vice. So I like that card. Jade Monolith. The next time a source of your choice would deal damage to a creature's turn, that source instead deals it to you. Yeah, if you want to protect a creature, I guess. B. Not much to say about that one really, because I feel like in Shandalar your life total starts off so low. The reason why you have creatures is basically to save your life. So it's not. It's a too valuable a resource, I think, to make that card innately really useful, I think. Jalum Tome, draw a card, then discard a card. B, C. Never used this. Could be useful if you have a way of using cards from your graveyard. But when you think of the cost... Ooh, why is Jade... Oh no, Jade Statue is not a creature. Oh, I see. Jade Statue will become a creature. Okay. I've not used this one. Yeah, it's quite useful. It's quite cheap. Yeah, I'd put this one in B or A. I've not seen this being used, but it would be really useful for certain. Yeah, definitely like something like something with a deck like Wrath of God, or anything which destroys or punishes creatures. The Tabernacle, I think I mentioned, or anything like that, where players are punished for having creatures, or even can't remember if it's in Shandalar, the Abyss or something. Mages for the Abyss, that might not be a Shandalar card. I'm going to put this in A. I think it's actually useful. Do not remember this card, but yeah, I love it. Milo and Jalum Tome I'm putting as a B. It's a bit fiddly and a bit meh. Discard the last card you drew this turn, draw a card. So that's kind of like the improved version of this, but it's expensive, so B. Yeah, it's okay. Jandor Saddlebags, untap target creature. This is useful, but what's it called? Oh dear, I've completely forgotten that. It's a green enchantment I looked at the other day, where you can untap for free. It's not called Invigorate, it's called something else, but that exists, so this is probably a B. A lot of artifacts kind of do what another card already does, but more expensively, and the payoff is that it's neutral. Giam Tome. Yeah, this is the tome I was thinking of. This is, it's more expensive, but it's just useful, much more useful. So A or B. I'm going to be generous and say A. Jeweled Bird. I don't remember this one. Put Jeweled Bird into the ante. If you do, put all other cards you own from the ante into your graveyard, then draw a card. That's interesting. I've not used this one. I might have to try that sometime. Does that mean it takes cards from your library and puts them in the graveyard? I mean, for 1 mana, it's... And you put all of the cards you own from the ante into your graveyard. Yeah, I guess because the first time you use it, Jeweled Bird would go into the ante. Everything else comes out of the ante, you draw a card. The second time you use it, it puts itself into the graveyard? I don't know how that's implemented. I might put it just as a B because I just don't know how it works, but I like the idea of that. Cormus Bell is living lands, but for swamps. Has all the same downsides as living lands. I don't think it's very useful. I'm going to put it as a B. I think realistically, turning all your lands into 1/1s is an easy way of losing all your lands. So, Library of Leng, you have no maximum hand size. This is cool. Really strong actually. So it completely counters card discards. You just put it on on top of your library instead, and it costs 1 mana. This is an A. I don't remember this card, but it's a straight up A. Mana Crypt. Terrible. F. Never run a card like that. And I've missed one out. Life Chisel. Sacrifice a creature, gain life equal to sacrifice creature's toughness. Sure. In a pinch. I'm going to put it in B. Yeah, I can see it being okay. Especially because the activation cost is free, so sure. Mana Vault is really interesting. If you use it properly, it can be very, very powerful. The AI is a little bit stupid, and they often just leave them unnecessarily tapped and take loads of damage from them over time. The Shapeshifter is a key example of where the AI is just not smart enough to use this card properly, basically. But I'm going to put it in A because using it properly and understanding the risks and untapping it as soon as possible make it a very good card. Meekstone is one of the only artifacts I would consider to be S tier genuinely, because with the right deck it can completely paralyze an opponent. If you have an opponent with lots of powerful creatures, this can and a way to, for example, a way to tap them in advance. As we saw earlier, there are cards that do that. Meekstone, there aren't very many ways to untap creatures. Instill Energy is what I was thinking of a second ago. This could potentially just, and especially in combination with stuff like Royal Assassin, devastating card, and it's so cheap, and you can quite easily have multiple Meekstones, as a insurance policy. Mightstone, attacking creatures get +1/+0. It's not really that useful. Why would you want your opponent to share the same benefits as you? It's not even ones that you control. There are way better cards that do this, and also it's only while you attack, so it's going to be a C, I think. Millstone, target player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. It is a good card, but it's limited usefulness in Shandalar, where everyone's running really large decks, so I'm going to put this one as a B, if not a C. Obviously we reach the Mox artifacts, which are basically, the reason why they're so strong is they are free and you can play as many as you want in one turn. So if you fill your deck full of Mox items, unless your opponent specifically has really strong anti-artifact, you're going to have a massive advantage by running them. There's almost no reason not to run them in a deck in Shandalar. That's why they're obviously dungeon treasures and really valuable. So these all go into S. I'm a huge fan of them. I mean, yeah, in terms of the game, in terms of like the gameplay of Shandalar, it feels very, very rewarding to get one of these cards. So I can see why they belong in here. You know, they're very strong. In terms of game balance, they probably should have cost 1 each. But there we go. Nevin Rao's Disc is really useful. The Witch uses this. Destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. And obviously the Witch's deck relies on creatures with... relies on effects that have regeneration. So, yeah, I think this is an A for sure. I think it's very useful, but you just have to build for it properly. Obelisk of Undoing. Return target permanent you both own and control to your hand. I think this is useful, potentially. You know, especially if a creature you control is about to be destroyed or is under the effects of lots of negative enchantments, you can just pull it back. The fact it costs 6 to use is not great, so I'm going to put it in B, but I think this is useful. Pandora's Box is a Astral / Shandalar exclusive card, and it's not great. Psych Bottle of Suleiman, but even worse because you can potentially give your opponent creatures. Yeah, I would never run this. You know, it's just begging for problems. It's just, you know, potentially with that flip of a coin, you could end up your opponent having their strongest creature played for free, while you do absolutely nothing. I don't like that kind of card. It's just way too random. Can't really build a strategy around it. Card art's lovely, but that is a hard F for me. Primal, not doing any creatures. Pyramids. Choose one. Destroy target aura attached to a land. Next time target land will be destroyed. Remove all damage marked on it instead. I guess this is kind of interesting. I'm more interested in the first effect it does. The second one is like, if you turn your lands into creatures, you can save a creature, but at the cost of 2 mana, I'm not sure how valuable that really is. But yeah, it's interesting. Destroy target aura attached to a land. So this refers to anything like cursed land or... Oh, I meant to say evil presence earlier instead of cursed land to turn things into swamps. But yeah, it can destroy anything like that. For 6, though, I don't know. I'm going to put this in B. I feel like you would just use enchantment destruction. But it's not certainly not useless. Red mana battery... Oh, sorry, I missed one out. Rakalite. Rakalite. Very nice. Prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to target creature or player this turn. Return Rakalite to its owner's hand. Oh, this is just annoying and complicated. And for 6, oh, this is definitely going in C. That's you're paying lots of mana to do something really teeny tiny over and over again. So yeah, all the mana batteries go into B because they're not bad. Relic Barrier. I do like Relic Barrier actually because it's very useful in Shandalar if your opponent has artifact creatures. This is quite a nice way to just protect yourself from that. I'm tempted to put this in A because it's so cheap. I feel like almost every deck in Shandalar uses some artifact in one way or another. So being able to keep tapping them over and over again for such a low cost, I think it's valuable. Ring of My Roof. Ooh, I don't know how this one's implemented in Shandalar. Next time you draw a card, instead choose a card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand. That could be fun, actually. That could be really fun. I think what it does, I think it's similar to... I have a feeling I've played this card before at least once, because I remember there's like a user interface that comes up where it asks you to pick a card. Yeah, this is quite interesting. It's a B because of how expensive it is, but I like the idea of this as a little bit of a failsafe. Obviously, Demonic Tutor is a million times better because it costs way less, but there we go. Rocket launcher. I guess the way you'd use it is you can use it over and over again during the one turn, but it's a C because it's not very good. Rod of Ruin, meanwhile, is very handy, just because it's a way of destroying 1/1s. It's like Prodigal Sorcerer. I do like this one. I think I might put it in A. I do like it. Sandals of Abdallah. I don't remember. Target creature gains Island Walk. If that creature dies this turn, destroy the sandals. C, because it's really niche. Not useless, but... Serpent Generator. This is one of those very niche, specific ways in Shandalar to generate creatures. And also they get Poison Touch. Yeah, so this is the way of generating creatures, and the creatures it generates apply poison counters. It's not useless. The fact you have to tap it is a little bit of a drawback, because it means you can only do that once per turn, in theory, unless you have a way of untapping it. I put it in B, just because there aren't many creature generation things like that. I think it's kind of useful. Soul Ring is actually more useful than it seems. You pay 1 mana to create 2, so A. As long as you can use the mana, don't get mana burn. Soul Net. Whenever a creature dies, you may pay 1. If you do gain 1 life, this is useful, I think, actually. I think the Archangel uses this. Don't know if it's necessarily A tier, but I do like it. Staff of Zegon, target creature gains -2/-0. For what it costs, I don't think it's really worth it, so putting that in a B, just a bit expensive. I mean, yeah, it's kind of useful to reduce the damage capacity of 1 creature per turn, but yeah, I think you'd rather just destroy the creature. Sunglasses of Urza. You may spend white mana as though it were red. Sure. I like the idea of it, but it's not really hard to have lands that generate both colours. Maybe B. Tablet of Epitome. It's kind of like Soulnet. It's okay. I wouldn't build a deck around losing artifacts, I guess. Could potentially have a combination with that transmographer thingy. I'm going to put it in B, though. Tornos's Coffin. I don't remember what this one does. Exile target creature and all it auras attached to it and all the counters that are on it. And Tornos Coffin leaves the battlefield and becomes untapped. This is actually quite useful. This is a bit like Detention Sphere, but you kind of have control of when it comes back. There's another card. I can't remember what it's called. It's not Journey into the Unknown, but it's something like that, where basically you exile your own creature for a turn and then it comes back. So yeah, that's a way of protecting a creature you need. And also the fact that I don't think this gets destroyed, does it? Yeah, because it could just untap and it comes back. I like that card. I think that deserves an A. I think that could actually be really useful. It's not too expensive. Tornos's Wand is really strong. With particular... There are creatures that can't be blocked by others if they have enough power. It's also a way of using poison counters. Yeah, I'd say it goes into A. I think it's one of the more useful ones with the right deck. Tornos's Weaponry is a bit like Ashnod's Armor. It's one of the early equip cards. I think it's a solid A. I do like it. It's obviously aged and quite dated compared to more modern cards, but I don't care. I like the way Shandalar's balanced, for the most part. Not completely. The Hive is really useful. It's another... I think that's a strong A. It's another creature generation card. I put that in B by mistake. It's used by like the Archangel and stuff like that, so they can use Wrath of God and then pull out a creature, guaranteed. The Rack is Black Vice, but weaker. 3 minus the number of cards. No, isn't it stronger? Hold on. Let me remind myself. X is the number of cards in his hand minus 4. Three minus the number of cards in his or her hand. Right, so this is the opposite. I see, yeah. So I always forget which way around it is. So this one is if they don't have enough cards. Obviously, you just play both, and then your opponent's always being punished. So this is definitely an A. Throne of Bone is another one of those. Gain 1 life once. Time Vault is a fun sort of one. But it's, apart from being fun, it's not necessarily really useful. It means you can take, yeah, basically it's taking 2 turns at the cost of skipping a turn. So yeah, realistically it's not actually very useful. Unless you have a way of untapping artifacts, in which case you can kind of break the game by having unlimited turns. But that's not a realistic strategy in Shandalar. So Urza's Chalice, this is another one of the gain 1 mana ones. It was quite useful. I guess the problem with a lot of these is realistically in a duel, you're always using all the land you have available to cast whatever you can on every turn for at least the first half of a duel, more or less. So it's not often that you're going to have a situation where you can just always have an extra mana to do something with. So yeah, that's why they're probably only up to B. Urza's Mitre. This could be useful. The card art's really beautiful. There's a B though. War Barge is like the Sandals but also bad, so C. This is too niche. Weak Stone is like Might Stone. This could actually be a little bit more useful because you could build a deck around debilitating all attacks and then you deal direct damage another way. So this one maybe is a B rather than a C, because I feel like you can stack enough of these on top of each other until creatures become useless in dealing damage. But then your deck builds an alternative to that. Yeah, no, that's not a little bit more useful. The mana batteries, as always, go into the same tier as each other. Winter Orb could be another S because it's so strong. Players can't untap more than 1 land during their untap steps. So if you play this at the right time, if you set this up properly, your opponent is again almost completely paralyzed along with Meek Stone. I think it's probably S. I know it's not as ridiculous as Black Lotus, which probably should be in a tier all by itself, but there we go. And then this is another Wooden Sphere is another one of those gaining 1 life sort of deals. So yeah, that is the list. I hope you enjoyed it. I went through that with all the vim and vigor I bring to every video I make. And next is going to be lands and then creatures. So yeah, thanks for watching.